Come on, pick up the phone. Please.
He called her 6 times. 6 times. And for the first time in 5 years, Amara Osei did not pick up. John Hyun-suk stood beside the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office, phone pressed to his ear, listening to the same silence that had never existed before. Below him, Seoul stretched like a living map. Towers of glass and light, highways pulsing with traffic. A city that moved because men like him allowed it to. He was 32 years old. He controlled shipping routes across 3 continents. He owned legitimate companies, shadowed companies, and companies that existed only in whispers. 12 governments had tried to investigate him. None had succeeded. He had survived assassination attempts, betrayals, and courtroom battles that lesser men would never have walked away from. But right now, standing in a room that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime, Jeon Hyun-suk was unsettled by a phone that kept ringing. He tried again. Nothing. He set the phone down slowly, his jaw tightened. His assistant, his most trusted, most reliable, most indispensable person, had never, not once in 5 years, ignored a call from him. Not during dinner, not during illness, not during the worst storm Seoul had ever seen. Once she had answered from a hospital waiting room, her voice perfectly calm, handling a crisis for him while her own world fell apart on the other side of the door. She always answered, always. It was his driver, Min, who had first mentioned it, casually, the week before, as they pulled away from a late meeting. "I saw Miss Osei in Mapo district on Saturday," Min had said, eyes forward, tone neutral. Coming out of a building near the church on Yeongnam Road. She was carrying what looked like bags of food. Hyun-suk had said nothing then. He had filed it away the way he filed everything, quietly, completely, for later. But now, with her phone ringing into silence for the 6th time, later had arrived. He picked up his jacket. He said nothing to the men stationed outside his office. He took the private elevator down, stepped into the black car waiting at the curb, and told Min the district, Mapo, near the church on Yeongnam Road. Min did not ask questions. He drove. Amara's address. He had never been there before. He had never needed to be. If you enjoy emotional stories filled with shocking discoveries, unforgettable romance, and life-changing decisions, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Leave a comment below and tell me what you think is going to happen next. Have you done that? Yes. Right now, let's begin. To understand what Jeon Hyun-suk was about to discover, you first need to understand what Amara Osei meant to him. She had arrived 5 years ago, 23 years old, the only finalist from West Africa, in a highly competitive corporate fellowship that placed top graduates in Seoul's most demanding executive environments. She carried a sharp mind, a calm that unnerved people twice her age, and an energy that felt entirely out of place in the cold, controlled world of John Enterprises. Hyun-suk had not particularly wanted to take the fellowship placement. He had wanted someone who knew Korea, someone who knew the unspoken rules, the hierarchies, the careful art of saying everything with a bow and nothing with words. He had wanted, in short, someone familiar. What he got was Amara. And within 3 months, she had reorganized his entire scheduling system, neutralized a leak in his legal team, renegotiated a contract in Singapore that had been stalling for 2 years, and done all of it without once raising her voice or asking for credit. His chief of staff had come to him after her 3rd month. The man had worked for Hyun-suk for 8 years. He was not a man who gave compliments. "She is better than me," he said simply. "She sees things before they happen." Hyun-suk kept Amara, and then he kept relying on her more and more and more. She learned Korean at a speed that impressed even the most skeptical members of his inner circle. She learned his preferences. 2 shots of espresso, no milk, no sugar. Meetings scheduled before noon. Reports delivered in bullet points, never paragraphs. She learned when to speak and when to let silence do the work. She was precise where others were sloppy. She was calm where others were reactive. When a business partner tried to bribe her, she documented it, reported it to Hyun-suk's legal team, and had the man removed from negotiations within 48 hours. without Hyun-suk ever having to lift a finger. He trusted her more than he trusted people he had known his entire life. But trust, he would later realize, was not the same as knowing. He knew her professionally. He knew her schedule, her work ethic, her capability under pressure. He did not know her, not even slightly. The car stopped near the church on Yeonam Road in Mapo district. Not poor, not wealthy. A quiet block of modest apartments with clean but tired walls, potted plants on balconies, laundry lines visible between windows. Beside the church, a narrow side entrance led to a small community hall. Hyun-suk stepped out alone. He had told Min to stay. He found the side door slightly ajar. He stopped. In 5 years, he had learned to read situations the way other people read weather, by instinct, by pattern, by the details most people overlooked. A door left open was either an invitation or a problem. He pushed it gently, and then he heard it. A child's voice. "Auntie, I finished the reading. Can I show you?" Hyun-suk's hand stilled on the door. Then another voice, younger. "Me too. Me too. I finished mine first." And then a third, quieter, shy. "I did not finish. The last page was hard." He stepped inside. The hall was small. Small, but impossibly full of life. The furniture was pushed to the walls. Colorful rugs covered the floor. There were books stacked carefully in neat piles by the window, by the small table, along the wall beside a makeshift kitchen corner. There were drawings pinned to a corkboard, children's drawings, the kind done with crayon and enormous confidence and no regard whatsoever for proportion. There were shoes lined up by the door, many different sizes, all of them small. And in the center of all of it, sitting cross-legged on the floor in a simple cotton dress, her hair pulled back, her reading glasses perched on her nose, was Amara Osei. She was surrounded by 7 children. 7. The youngest looked no more than 4, the oldest maybe 11. Different faces, different sizes, some laughing, some focused, some leaning against her, like plants growing towards sunlight. She was not reading to them. She was listening. A small boy, perhaps 6 years old, was standing in front of her, holding a children's book open with both hands, reading aloud with enormous seriousness, sounding out each syllable with the concentration of someone diffusing a bomb. The cat sat on the mat, Amara said softly, not correcting, completing gently. "The mat," the boy announced, delighted. "Perfect," she said, and the way she said it, the warmth in that one word, made something in John Hyun-suk's chest tighten unexpectedly. She had not yet seen him. He stayed at the threshold, unable to move, unable to announce himself, watching something he had not been prepared to see. A girl tugged at Amara's sleeve. "Are we eating tonight? Can we have the jollof again?" Amara laughed. A real laugh. Nothing like the professional courtesy he was accustomed to hearing from her. "We are eating, and yes, jollof, but everyone finishes their homework first." A chorus of exaggerated groans. "That includes you, Tobias," she added, pointing at the small boy who had already tried to close his book. He froze. She had not even looked at him. He opened the book again. Hyun-suk stepped back. His shoulder touched the door frame. The slight sound made Amara look up. She saw him. For a single moment, just one, he saw something cross her face that he had never seen before. Not panic, not guilt. Something closer to a person who had been caught being entirely, vulnerably themselves, with no armor and no performance, and who now had to decide what to do about it. Then it vanished. She was professional again, in an instant. "Sir," she rose carefully, stepping around the children. "I apologize. My phone, I left it by the window. I didn't hear it ring." "Who is that?" the girl asked. "A colleague," Amara said simply. "Continue with your work." She came to the door and stepped outside, pulling it nearly closed behind her. They stood in the narrow corridor beside the church wall, the most powerful man in Asia's shipping world and his assistant in a cotton dress, and for the first time in 5 years, Jeon Hyun-suk did not know what to say. Who are they? It was the only question he could form. Amara looked at him steadily. There was no apology in her eyes, no shame, but there was something careful. The way a person looks when they are deciding exactly how much of themselves to hand over. Children from a church-run after-school program, she said. The program lost its government funding 2 years ago. The church keeps it going, but there are no tutors, barely any materials. I help where I can. How long? She paused. 4 years. 4 years. He had employed her for 5. Every week, every Saturday, and some evenings, when I'm able to manage the schedule. He looked at her. Really looked, in a way he rarely allowed himself to look at anyone. This was the woman who organized his empire, who managed his secrets, who arrived before him every morning and left after him every night. And in the space between those hours, she was doing this. You never mentioned it, he said. You never asked about my personal life, she replied, not unkindly, simply. He had no answer for that, because it was true. He stood there for a moment longer, and then said the thing he had originally come for, the confidential deal, the document that needed her approval. She listened with complete attention, gave him her analysis in 3 sentences, told him to send the digital copy, and she would flag any concerns within the hour, and then calmly excused herself to return to the children. He walked back to the car. He sat. He did not move for 11 minutes. Min, who had been with him for 9 years and was wise enough to know when silence was more useful than conversation, said nothing. Hyun-suk stared at the church building and for the first time in a very long time felt something uncomfortable stirring in his chest. The particular discomfort of a man who has just discovered that the map he was using to navigate his life is missing entire territories. 1 month. That was how long remained until Jeon Hyun-suk was scheduled to marry Yoon Mi-rae. She was 29, beautiful in the way that required effort and resources. The only daughter of Chairman Lim, head of one of Korea's most powerful conglomerates, a man whose fortune was old and whose influence was older. The union between Jeon and Lim had been discussed for 3 years, negotiated for 1, and celebrated by the business press as the merger of the decade. The media loved Mi-rae. She was photographed at fashion weeks, charity galas, museum openings. She had the effortless confidence of a woman who had never been told she was anything less than extraordinary, and she wore that confidence like a second skin. Hyun-suk respected her. He did not love her. He understood this as a practical man understands the weather, as a condition to be navigated, not controlled. Marriage in his world was rarely about love. It was about alliance, stability, legacy. He had made peace with this reality many years ago, but he had never until now questioned whether peace was the same as happiness. 2 days after visiting the church hall in Mapo, he sat across from Mi-rae at dinner, a restaurant that required 3 months' reservation, a wine list that required a translator, and he watched her speak. She was talking about the wedding venue, about the seating arrangements, about the journalist from a major magazine who wanted an exclusive feature on the couple. She was brilliant at this. The performance of being powerful, the curation of an image. He watched her and thought unexpectedly of Amara, not comparing exactly, just noticing. Noticing the difference between a woman who managed the impression she made on the world and a woman who apparently had not thought about impressions at all when she quietly spent 4 years feeding and teaching children that the world had forgotten. He said nothing at dinner, but something had shifted, and shifts like that in men like Hyun-suk were rarely silent for long. He called Amara into his office 2 days later, not for work. She could sense this the moment she sat down. He asked her directly, "Why don't you talk about it? What you do for those children?" She considered the question with the same focus she brought to everything. "Because it is not something I do for conversation," she said. "I do not need anyone to know." "Doesn't it cost you financially?" A pause. "It does, but I manage." He knew her salary. He had said it himself. Generous, as befitting someone of her ability. But generous and sufficient were 2 different things when you were quietly supporting 7 children on top of your own living expenses. "You should have said something," he said. "There are resources." "I did not want resources," she interrupted, politely but firmly. "I wanted to do it myself, quietly, without it becoming something it is not." "What do you mean?" She met his eyes. "When people know about generosity, it becomes performance. I did not want to perform. I just wanted to help. He was quiet for a long moment. Why those children, specifically? Something shifted in her face, barely perceptible, like a door that opened 1 inch and then closed again. Because someone helped me once, she said. I am simply returning what I received. She offered nothing more, and he, aware suddenly that he was standing at the edge of something private and deep, did not push, not yet. The announcement came on a Tuesday. No press release, no prepared statement, no consultation with PR teams or legal advisors or the powerful men whose investments depended on this union being completed. Jaeon Hyun-suk called Chairman Lim himself. The conversation lasted 6 minutes. When it ended, Hyun-suk sat back in his chair, looked at the ceiling, and breathed like a man who had just put down something very heavy. By evening, it was everywhere. Jaeon Hyun-suk cancels wedding. Lim family in crisis. The headlines were merciless. The speculation was immediate and frenzied. A rival, a scandal, a business dispute, hidden beneath the surface of the alliance. Journalists offered theories with the confidence of people guessing at locked rooms. Nobody guessed the truth, because the truth was not a scandal. It was a question. A simple, devastating private question that Hyun-suk had been unable to stop asking himself since that Saturday afternoon beside the church in Mapo district. What kind of man am I? Not in terms of power, not in terms of success. He knew those answers, but in the places where power could not reach, in the private chambers of character, where nobody was watching, where there was no strategy and no image to protect, who was he? Mireille was the right choice for the empire he had built, but Amara, without meaning to, without trying to, had made him question whether the empire was the right choice for the man he wanted to be. He was not in love with Amara, not yet. He barely knew her. But she had cracked something open in him. Some long-sealed door and light was coming through, and the light was uncomfortable and necessary and impossible to ignore. The fallout was spectacular. Yoon Mirai did not cry publicly. She was far too skilled for that. Instead, she appeared at a charity function 3 days later, dressed in ivory, smiling the particular smile of a woman who intends to be perceived as devastated but dignified. She was photographed with the right people. She said the right things. And then privately, she made calls. Mireille was not a woman who accepted consequences without distributing them. She had pieced together through her own contacts, through the rumor networks that move through Seoul's elite like underground rivers, that there was a woman, an assistant, a Ghanaian woman who had somehow, inexplicably, gotten inside Jaeon Hyun-suk's head. She did not confront Hyun-suk directly. She went after Amara first, subtly. Questions directed at Hyun-suk's inner circle, whispers placed in the right ears. Who is she really? Why is she here? What does she want? Then, less subtly still, she took what she had gathered to a well-known gossip publication. Within 48 hours, a story ran online. The headline was precise and cruel. Who is Amara Osei, the foreign assistant at the center of Korea's biggest broken engagement? The article was careful enough to stay legal. The implication was clear enough to cause damage. It dug into Amara's background, her origins, her fellowship placement, framing everything that was remarkable about her as suspicious. By the time Amara saw it, it was already spreading across every platform. She read the article once. Her face did not change. She sat at her desk, the screen in front of her, and read every word of the version of herself that someone had assembled to be used against her. Her childhood, her origins, the things she had never told anyone, now laid out as questions rather than facts, as insinuations rather than truth. Then she closed the tab and went back to work. She did not tell Hyun-suk. He found out anyway. He had people whose entire function was to know what moved through his circles. He came to Amara's office. He closed the door. He turned his own phone screen toward her so she could see the article. I know you saw this, he said. She looked at the screen, then at him. I closed it. I know. Then why are you here? Because, he said, and his voice was quieter than she had ever heard it. Whatever is in that article, I want you to know it changes nothing. Not for me. She looked at him for a long time. You didn't give them the information, she said. No. Then you don't know everything in it. Not fully, he agreed. But I know you. And whoever you were before you became who I know, that person deserves the same respect. Her jaw moved slightly, tightened, the expression of someone working very hard to contain something large. Hyun-suk, she said carefully. You don't have to tell me anything, he said. I just needed you to know. He left. She sat for a while. Then she picked up her phone and called a number she had not called in months. An older woman's voice answered from Lagos, gentle and familiar. My daughter, the woman said. How are you? I'm fine, Mama Folake, Amara said. I just wanted to hear your voice. It happened the way real things always happen. Not at the moment designed for it, but at the ordinary moment when defenses are down and the heart has grown tired of protecting itself. It was a Saturday. Rain had come unexpected and heavy, and the children were all inside. The hall was warm and loud and full. Hyun-suk was helping a boy named Emeka assemble a puzzle of the solar system. Amara was across the room, braiding Ada's hair and listening to a girl named Precious explain at considerable length why she believed dogs were smarter than cats. At some point, the room grew quieter. The children had eaten. Some were drowsy. The oldest, a boy of 11 named Kofi, had started reading independently in the corner, a habit he had developed over the past months, to Amara's visible pride. Hyun-suk looked across the room at Amara. She was laughing at something Ada had said, her whole face open, unguarded, completely alive in a way he had never seen in 5 years of watching her across conference tables and boardrooms. He thought, I have been in the wrong rooms. Later, when all the children had gone, escorted home by the church coordinator, and it was only the two of them in the quiet hall with rain against the high windows, Amara made tea from a flask she had brought. They sat at the small table in the corner and watched the rain. She told him then, not because he asked, because she had decided. I was abandoned, she said simply. I was 4 years old. I don't know who my parents were. I was found and brought to a children's home in Lagos, a small place, almost no money, run by a woman named Mama Folake, who was somehow both tired and warm at exactly the same time. She wrapped her hands around her cup. Mama Folake's home gave me everything. Safety, school, someone who expected more from me than I expected from myself. I left when I was 18. I worked, I studied, I won the fellowship, I got here. She paused. I never forgot what it feels like to be small and uncertain and dependent on someone else's decision to notice you, to care. So when I found children like the ones I used to be, she stopped, started again. I couldn't not. You understand? I simply could not walk past. Hyun-suk said nothing for a moment. Then why didn't you tell me? Because it is mine, she said. The most important things are always mine. The work I give you, the rest is mine. He understood this. He understood it completely. And the understanding hit him with a weight he had not anticipated, because he recognized, in her words, the same wall he had built around his own self, the same instinct toward protection, the same profound suspicion of vulnerability. They had been, without knowing it, profoundly similar. Amara, he said. Don't, she said gently. Not yet. Don't say it yet. Why? Because once you say it, everything changes, and I need to know that you are sure of what you want before everything changes. He looked at her for a long moment across the small table in the quiet hall, with rain against the windows and tea going cold between them. All right, he said. I'll wait. Yoon Mirai made her final move 3 days later. She had not abandoned her efforts. She had simply refined them. Instead of going after Amara personally, she went after Amara's position. A document arrived at the office of the Jeon Enterprises Board. An anonymous complaint citing potential conflicts of interest, alleging that Hyun-suk's personal assistant had access to sensitive information that was being improperly leveraged. The language was careful. The implication was clear. Amara was called in by the board's ethics committee. She sat in a room with 6 people, all older, all Korean, all powerful, and answered every question with such complete precision and composure that two of the committee members privately told Hyun-suk afterward that they were more concerned about whoever had filed the complaint than about the woman who answered it. But the damage was different. When Amara walked out of that room, something had changed in her face. Not defeat. She was incapable of defeat, in the obvious sense. But something had closed, some door that had been slowly, carefully opening. She requested a meeting with Hyun-suk that afternoon. She told him she was resigning. The room went absolutely still. "This is becoming a problem," she said, her voice professional and clean. "My position here is being used as a tool against you, against the company. I will not be used as a weapon in someone else's war. I think it's best." "No," he said. "Hyun-suk, no." He stood. The word was not a command. It was a plea, dressed in the only clothing he knew. "You are not leaving. I think it's the right thing." "For who? For me or for you?" He came around the desk, stopped in front of her. "Because if you're leaving to protect me, I don't need protecting. If you're leaving to protect yourself, I understand. But if you are leaving because you are afraid of what is happening between us, then you need to know that I am afraid too, and I am not going anywhere." She looked at him. "I was abandoned once," she said quietly, "by people who were supposed to stay. I do not do this easily. I do not." Her voice faltered. "Just slightly. Just enough. I do not let people in easily." "I know," he said. "Neither do I." Silence. "I spent 5 years beside you," he said, "and I knew nothing. I knew your work. I knew your efficiency. I knew your loyalty. I didn't know you." He paused. "I know you now, and I am not going to lose you because someone is angry and I wasn't brave enough to say so." She was very still. "What are you saying?" she asked. "I'm saying," he said carefully, "that I don't want you as my assistant, Amara. A beat. I want you as my partner, in every way that word means." The silence stretched. Then she said, "That's a significant statement from a man who 3 months ago was engaged to someone else. I know. I need time. Take it. And I'm not resigning." He almost smiled. "I know." 2 weeks later, Jaeon Hyun-suk did something he had not done in years. He agreed to a rare sit-down interview, not with a business publication, but with a journalist known for long-form cultural features. It was supposed to be about the state of global shipping. It became something else entirely. He sat across from the journalist in a quiet room. No cameras, just a recorder and 2 people talking. And at some point, without announcement, he said, "I recently discovered something about a person I thought I knew completely. She had been quietly, for years, without telling anyone, caring for children that the world decided were not her responsibility, not for recognition, not for image, simply because she could, and because someone once did the same for her." The journalist went still. "That woman taught me more about strength in one afternoon than anything I have learned in 32 years of building power. Real strength is not what you accumulate. It is what you do when nobody is watching. It is who you are when there is nothing to gain." He looked at the recorder. "I canceled my wedding because I realized I had forgotten to ask myself what kind of life I actually wanted to live. And the answer, when I finally asked honestly, was this: I want to live a life that means something. I want to stand next to someone whose goodness is real, not performed, not curated, not designed for cameras. I found that person, and I am choosing her." The interview published 3 days later. By evening it had been read by more people than any business story Jaeon Enterprises had ever generated. The response was not polite or measured. It was the genuine startled energy of people who had just encountered something they had not expected to find in a place like that. Outside, in a car, parked near the Jaeon Enterprises building, Amara sat with her phone showing the article, one hand pressed to her mouth, eyes bright. Ada, who had been brought along for reasons that seemed entirely sensible at the time, leaned over and looked at the screen. "Is that your person?" Ada asked. Amara made a sound that was somewhere between a laugh and something she would not name in front of a 9-year-old. "Maybe," she said. "He writes a lot," Ada said thoughtfully. "But it's good writing. There is a version of this story that ends with a wedding. Grand, photographed, perfect. That is not this story. This story ends 6 months later, on a Saturday morning, when a boy named Kofi came running to find Amara, breathless, holding a folded set of plans. "Auntie, Auntie, you have to come and see." He grabbed her hand and pulled. They walked 3 streets from the church to a vacant lot that Amara had passed 100 times without a second thought, except it was no longer vacant. The foundation had already been laid. A sign stood at the edge of the site, clean and simple. Osei Learning Center, opening in 8 months. Amara stood very still. The children erupted around her. Ada was pointing at the plans. Emeka was insisting he already knew what his room would look like. Precious was explaining very loudly that it should have a library and also a garden for the cats that were definitely smarter than dogs. Amara looked at the sign for a long time. Then she looked across the lot to where Hyun-suk stood, hands in his pockets, watching her with the particular patience he had developed over the past months, like a man who has finally found the right room and has no intention of leaving. "You named it after me," she said. She was not asking. "The children needed something permanent," he said simply. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she walked across the lot and stood beside him. Their hands found each other without ceremony, the way things do when they have finally stopped being uncertain. "I have a board meeting Monday," he said. "I know," she said. "I scheduled it. You're still my assistant. I'm your partner," she corrected, "who also manages your schedule, because without me you would agree to lunch with people who waste your time." "That's true. I know." They stood there together, in the noise and the warmth and the life she had built, without asking anyone's permission. He is not what she expected love to look like. She is not what he expected to choose, but the best things rarely are. He told the world she was the woman who taught him what real strength looks like. She told nobody anything. She just made sure the children had somewhere to grow, and that, more than any declaration or ceremony or headline, was exactly who she had always been. If this story moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more stories about love that surprises you, strength that shows up quietly, and the people who change your life without trying to. See you next time.